Whatever you wind up doing is exactly what you should be doing.
And I have not behaved one single day of my life. Not one day of my life have I behaved, and I am fine.
I need your help. I can't tell you what it is. You can never ask me about it later, and we're going to hurt some people.
Whose car are we going to take?
Thank you for joining us on the Nikki Medoro Show live on YouTube, and I'm so thankful that you guys get in here early. I love Jim Slayton's comment, though. It started off this show really nicely. Jim writes, as Nikki's show is closing yesterday, I ride in a vehicle tall enough where I could see Apple CarPlay in other cars. And the car in front of me was listening to Nikki. Well, isn't that nice? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You guys are awesome. We have a great show coming up. My computer might be glitching a little bit, but we're just going to ignore it. I hope that you can still hear my voice. Let me know if you can't. All right. So we have to, of course, talk about the reverse boycott. I was following it on social media yesterday. It was freaking awesome. And I'm not a huge baseball fan. So I just thought it was amazing to see the fans out there. I'm friends with A's fans. And I am friends with some A's fans that were actually there last night. 28,000 fans showed up. So that's kind of amazing. And there is this long shot to hopefully keep the A's or at least make them pay if they're really going to leave. So we'll talk about this bill, this Moneyball Act that's being introduced. Some other news. We'll, of course, update the Nevada situation as well and getting the A's. San Jose police officers in my neck of the woods. What the heck? So they're disciplined for misconduct, but they get to stay on the job because, you know, there's a police shortage. Now, again, not knocking cops, but I would say that this is what drives the average person crazy. You do wrong, you should be punished, especially when you're in a position of power. How are other cops going to behave, let's just say, if they know that their fellow cop is just going to get away with misbehaving? We'll delve into that. We'll also talk about the consequences for Elizabeth Holmes. We weren't able to get into that yesterday very much, but she doesn't want to pay $250 a month in restitution, which is a bit rich. Margorie Taylor Greene. I am so excited to play this video for you guys. She likes an uneducated staff, which doesn't surprise me because I don't know why someone would want to be on the staff of Margorie Taylor Greene, but it was quite interesting to watch. Republicans, at least behind closed doors, seem to be slowly moving away from former President Donald Trump as they take a closer look at this federal criminal indictment against him, even including his former Vice President, Mike Pence. In the second part of the show, we're going to look at, just the recovery in the city of San Francisco. I'll tell you how they rank on this list. And it's interesting who's at the bottom and who's at the top of the list. And I want you guys to tell me, what do you think it is? Fundamentally, what do you think it is? Because it's not as if it's all of California. There's also some data looking into criminals that might include you, people that evade fares on Muni. So Muni's going to possibly be able to do something about that. We'll check into that. Also, check fraud is up, and it's been going up in recent months. And it actually, I think, started during the pandemic. How many of you guys still write checks? I do. I literally had to go pick up counter checks at the bank. Now, I don't buy the big old books because, one, it's kind of expensive the last time I checked. And if I only need a couple, which is usually what I need, you could just go to the counter at your bank and get them. But do you still write checks? And when I show you this news report, they were interviewing people asking that same question. And they talked to someone in the younger generation who, no. And I would wonder if it'd be like a test. Can you even fill out this check properly? What other skills do you think the younger generation is losing? Driverless cars. There was a researcher that wanted to see how people react to driverless cars. And it's pretty interesting. And then we're going to end the show by talking about this TikToker who faked his own death. And I will say this, I get why he did it, but how many of you would actually be able to do something like that. But to start off the show, you guys, please click the thumbs up button. It helps everything out. YouTube loves it, and it just exposes us to new people, and we want to grow this community. The super chat is also live, and let me say some thank yous right off the bat to Wes, starting us off with a $10 super sticker, and Joe starting us off with a $10 super sticker. You guys are awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So yeah, if you're new to the show, the super chat is a way for you to throw some dollars our way, whether it's live, recorded, or on replay. You can look for the $ under the live chat box, and it could be to the side, depending on whether you're on your phone or on the computer. But you look for it, you could donate, and we definitely check those out and appreciate it because it helps keep the show running. Because why, people? We are 100% crowdfunded. We depend on our community here, and we love you guys. Medorables out there, we are growing by the day. A big thank you to everyone that's been signing up. If you want to be a Medorable, as I love to call my monthly Patreon subscribers, please go to theNikkiMedoroShow.com, theNikkiMedoroShow.com, and the Patreon link is right there. And we don't set a bar. You can donate as little or as much as you can afford. And if you can afford more, we would appreciate it because, again, it keeps the show going. And on that website, our show's website, there's links to our Patreon and our merch shop. All right, so all of that business is out of the way. Let's start, my friends, with yesterday's people are saying it's a victorious reverse boycott. The people packed the Coliseum. 28,000 fans were reportedly in attendance at the Oakland Coliseum, and they beat, thank God, right? I mean, thank God they won. They're on, was it seven or eight a game winning streak against the Tampa Bay Rays. They won 2-1. But it was the people in the stand. So I wanted to show you some of the videos that I found on online. And it's important because, Jesus, I just wish the team owners could understand. Look at this. Listen to that chanting. Look at that crowd. I mean, it's so nice to see the stadium also filled with people. They were able to crowdfund and had all these t-shirts that said sell that they handed out to people that were able to go. Another person that was at the game goes into the bathroom, and when they come out, this is what they see. And I thought it was just so, I mean, just the liveliness of the whole thing. It's just so awesome. So yeah, it was a great turnout. Anybody in the comments there? I'm trying to see on my own. Did anybody go to the game last night? Because it must, I do know that, like, I have some friends that said that they were there, and I was following them on social media. John, did you go? You say, yes, it was amazing. Love the A's. That's awesome if you were there. John also says, love the A's. Can't stand the ownership. Lady Beatrice says the A's should pay. They're letting the fans down, and they should. That's, I definitely think they are letting their fans down. And if anything, the fans did show that they're there for the team. But again, and I've mentioned this before, you can't sell all the good players, right? Trade them and not update the stadium, let it go to hell, basically, and then raise ticket fees. So no, that's not going to happen. Here's Oakland Mayor Shang Tao. She was at the game as well. You know what else was interesting? I want to show you this. So this guy, Kalen Burney, I found on Twitter, and apparently he was at the game. And he tweets out, the A's stadium camera crew cannot get any video that doesn't have a protest shirt or sign in it. So instead, they're filling the video board with photos from other games, random pre-produced segments, and clips from old A games, no crowd shots. And let me show you some of these pictures. Oh, let me take Shane down. Here's some of the pictures from it. Look at this. So here's one. And so you see, like, no real crowd shots. Here's another one. Basically an A's hat. And with all of this, the chanting and screaming and everything, you'd think they show more. So he goes on to say, during the 7th inning stretch, the video swung between a generic A's logo, a group of kids between walls where others cannot pop into the frame, an extremely tight shot from an odd angle of 2 fans not wearing protest gear. Then he says the A's just tied the game. The crowd went wild, but after the inning, we got the A's logo, B-roll from a past game, and a fan vote, which was really, really interesting to see. I feel like obviously they were probably told, the camera people were probably told, look, we don't want you to piss off the owners or anything like that. Just keep it off of because it was very well organized, very, very well organized. Apparently, at certain parts of the game, there was like a placard or some sort of thing handed out to people reportedly, and they would tell them, okay, here's where you're silent. Here's where you yell, sell the team. So it was very, very organized. Yeah, Lady Beatrice, the ownership doesn't care about the team or the fans or baseball. They just care about money which is cheaper for them to go to Vegas rather than just renovating the GD Stadium. Exactly. Let's welcome Kim McAllister to the show. So Kim, I mean, it's a long shot, and I'm about to get into it. Hi, that Congress people, Barbara Lee and Mark Desaulniers, are proposing the Moneyball Act. And the Moneyball Act is legislation that would require the owners of any professional baseball club seeking to relocate to compensate the state and local authorities they move away from. If the owners do not oblige, then Major League Baseball would be subject to the antitrust laws they've been exempt from for over a century. Do you think they're grasping at straws here? I mean, I feel like it might be a long shot that something like this is actually going to get passed.
I don't know. I was just talking to Albert about he was in Oakland last night.
Uh-huh. Oh, good. Good.
He was saying that he was late for a concert. He was going to a concert, and there was so much traffic of people going to the A's game.
Mm-hmm.
He was an hour late to the show that he was going to, and he said it was so full that for the first time in a long time, it was audible. You could hear people inside rooting for the A's and chanting. That's how well organized it was.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, there's support. There is huge support. So,
Well, look at this. I mean, you're talking about being stuck in traffic. This was from Raj Mathai. Look at the traffic trying to get into the game or getting into the Coliseum. They were saying that even in the 9th inning, I saw someone say people are still trying to get into the stadium, and it's the 9th inning. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe just to kind of be there for it and be amongst the crowd. But I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I do feel like obviously the A's are going to go to Nevada. They've already passed. So the stadium financing bill in Nevada cleared a hurdle yesterday after being approved by the Nevada Senate. Now, it still needs to be considered by the Assembly, but it does have the support of their governor. So it does look like it's going to happen. Yeah. And the Oakland's going to lose the last sporting team that they have. I feel bad because on one hand, I think there was a lot of promise. I mean, from Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf to current Mayor Sheng Tao, I think there really was this concerted effort, a lot of work, a lot of talks went into trying to keep the A's in Oakland and to revitalize this area. If you could look into your crystal ball, people watching, and Kim, what happens to Oakland? I mean, what do you think is going to happen if there's no more stadium, there's no more sports team, and I will even go as far as saying, and there's no more appetite to revitalize this area?
Well, how many sports teams left within just a matter of years,
right?
Within just a few years. So the Raiders are gone, right? The A's are checking out.
Mm-hmm.
The Warriors are up across the bay in San Francisco,
right?
So I don't know what Oakland does. We interviewed Libby Schaaf, former Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, over and over again, and she was working hard and trying to keep the A's in Oakland, trying to revitalize an area. But I don't know what else she could have done, honestly.
Well, I do. And Jim, I agree with you. Jim, I feel bad for Oakland. I do too. Randy, I don't know, and I apologize for my dog. Who's gonna build something on the current site of the Coliseum? I don't know. I mean, you have so many issues that are surrounding the city of Oakland that San Francisco and a lot of other cities are facing. And later on, we're going to talk about this data that shows where San Francisco specifically lists as revitalizing its downtown. I am sure that Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf is completely disappointed. Absolutely disappointed. I mean, when we had her on the last time on this podcast, I mean, she was hopeful, of course. She wanted it. She was born and raised in Oakland. But there's only so much you can do as a mayor. And like Mayor Shantel said, if they're not negotiating in good faith, if they all this time and with the help of the MLB, right, we're going to waive relocation fees because Nevada needs to buy a retractable roof stadium or build a retractable roof stadium. That's the reason you're leaving Oakland with this massive hole. And I mean, you could blame Oakland, you could blame, politics and crime and homelessness, but at the same time, I do believe they're kind of putting their foot on the scales a little bit in favor. I mean, the MLB is in favor of Nevada, and it sucks. It really, really sucks. Yeah. And Star says, I'm so glad Chris Cohen sold the Warriors to Lacob. They kept him in the Bay. Yeah, exactly. You have to want to be invested in your area, and the whole rooted in Oakland crap, I'll say, that was being spewed by the A's owners, it was a lie. They're not rooted in Oakland, and I don't think they ever were. But it was so nice to see, even if it was kind of a sad goodbye, because I think that's what it's really going to be. Now, I don't know if this bill by Barbara Lee and DeSaulnier, if it passes the Moneyball Act that requires the compensation, what that amount would actually be. Would it be enough to stop the move to Nevada? I don't think so. But maybe it matters what it would say. If MLB loses, that exemption, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but it's a little like grasping at straws at this point, and it's sad, but yesterday, at least for the fans, it was a good day to see. It really was. All right, let's switch gears and come to my neck of the woods down here in the South Bay. Now, we have talked about policing, not just in the Bay Area, not just in California, but across the nation. Obviously it started up again, although we've been talking about, criminal justice reform and bad policing for decades. But when the George Floyd murder happened, a lot of people were re-examining what policing should look like, holding officers accountable. And every time I talk about this, I always emphasize, I do believe there's more good cops than bad cops. You just need to hold bad cops accountable, because if you don't, then there's literally no consequence. There's no reason why another cop that might be a good cop would just follow the straight and narrow if he can get away with it. And that seems to be what's happening in San Jose. And I don't mean to be so blunt about it, but it kind of pisses me off, because on one hand, I know we have a police shortage. I know police, a lot of them don't feel supported by the community in which they work. I get that. I want to show you this news report from NBC Bay Area, because it really encompasses a lot of information, and it has to do with some San Jose police officers disciplined for misconduct. So they've already misbehaved, right? They've done the wrong thing, but guess what? They get to keep doing their job.
San Jose police officer for various types of misconduct involves suspending them for a period of time without pay. But under the newest union contract, there is another option. The department can ask officers to continue working, but have their pay reduced temporarily. It's an option other city unions have had for years, but is new to the police department. The city's police watchdog, however, says it's concerning. And while the police union says the change is no big deal, Ladoris Cordell, a retired Superior Court judge and the former San Jose independent police auditor, disagrees.
To basically give them a little slap on the wrist and say, just stay at work. Even though you engaged in misconduct, we still want you out here patrolling the streets. That, to me, is very disturbing.
It's still not clear what kinds of misconduct would lead to a pay reduction instead of a suspension. But we know that so far, 2 sworn officers have received the temporary pay hit while remaining on duty. The current independent police auditor voiced her concerns in her latest annual report, saying in a statement her office has serious concerns regarding this portion of the POA agreement. While it is important to maintain public safety services, the consequences for the officers who engage in misconduct should carry equal weight. The question becomes whether loss of earnings equates to real accountability and behavioral change. The union denied our request for an interview, and the city says nobody was available to talk on the issue.
Of course.
But Judge Cordell says changes like this can erode the trust between the public and police.
I'm very disappointed and I'm very concerned about this new direction with regard to the suspension, a disciplinary action that is now being basically redefined and basically, in my view, completely watered down.
In San Jose.
So, I mean, I just don't get it. I don't get at this moment, especially this moment in history, when we really are demanding as a community that people that do wrong be held accountable, whether you are the former president of the United States, whether you're any Tom, Dick, and Joe down the street, or whether you're a member of law enforcement. If you do wrong, there is a consequence that is equal to what anybody else would get. I would say that a former president maybe should get a harsher one. But that's the problem here. People are not going to trust policing. They're not going to trust investigations if they think that bad cops who are found to have committed misconduct are still allowed to believe, oh, we're going to dock their pay. Dock their pay? How do I don't even, maybe I wouldn't even trust the fact that they're docking it correctly. Or can they just make it up with overtime that we know cops are getting because they're so short-staffed? So is it really docking their pay? Are they really feeling it? Al Anonymous says the pervasive acceptance of bad behavior and no consequences and culture of protect your fellow cop is ludicrous. That thin blue line is eroding the trust the community has with policing. Now, again, I want to emphasize this because I have friends who are cops. I have friends who are married to cops, and I know they get really sensitive when I say stuff like this. I'm not talking about your cop or you if you're a good cop. It's kind of like, why do you feel so personally attacked when I talk about bad cops if you're a cop? Why? Why do you feel bad about that? You should not want bad cops on the force.
Because they rally around, right?
But why? That makes you part of the problem.
So
right?
here's something else just to throw in. And people will say, no, bad cops should be fired no matter what, get rid of them, whatever. But you have across the country a massive shortage of police officers.
Right.
Is it better to just say, you know what, you've done these things, you can't be trusted to police America, you're out, done? Or is it better to take people, really put the work into them, sensitivity training, if their crimes haven't been egregious, beating people, that type of thing, but to take the people that maybe sent a racist email, right?
Okay.
Like it has happened allegedly in Antioch. Right. And in San Francisco too, they fired a bunch of people on their maybe personal cell phones or department issued cell phones, sending out these racist, homophobic, misogynist texts. The things they said were awful. But given the shortage of police, do you train people? Do you take them? Do you rehabilitate them into maybe being officers? Because maybe firing them we can't afford right now.
Good point. Good point. And I'm going to add this to the conversation and then I'm going to answer you. Okay. Lady Beatrice says, we've all grown up with this idea that cops are the effing good guys when they're not. And no one wants to think they could do wrong, but they do. I think the thinking is, and kind of to answer your question is, it's a slippery slope, Kim. If sending racist text messages to fellow cops is egregious, but not egregious enough to get fired, but then they're going out and policing the very people they wrote those racist text messages about, and then those people are saying, I didn't do anything wrong, this cop is targeting me. How can we trust it? It's all an erosion of trust.
It's true.
They should hold themselves to such a higher standard, and that needs to be reinforced. And maybe it's not. We talk about older people need to have driver's license tests all the time to make sure that they still have all the faculties to drive a car, and I don't know because I'm not in law enforcement. I mean, how many times, besides just the basic training of shooting and kind of the physical aspect of being a cop, I mean, I know that there's, when you're caught, let's say in an officer involved shooting, you go through some sort of mental health checks. But what about more than that? What about yearly or every few years? You got to get a down deep psychological, we check all of your cases type of thing. And I know, again, it's staffing, but there's a huge responsibility that cops have. They have so much power simply by being a cop, that to hold them and have all of these, oh, well, we're short, so this is okay. I get what you're saying, but that leaves us, the public, in harm's way because bad cops can get away with it because there's a staffing shortage.
Yeah.
It's a tough, it's tough. It's a tough problem to solve. I just wish that there were cops that would be on the front lines of getting bad cops out of the department.
Yeah.
And I know that that's easier said than done because you have to trust your fellow cop. You back each other up. You save each other's lives. I can't imagine if my life was saved by a cop and then that cop was found to have done something bad. I'm going to turn my back on that person. That person saved my life. That person, you know, I trust with my life, and I'm going to turn on them. But if you don't, then what are you protecting? So yeah, I don't agree with this. I really do think that it's sad. It really is sad that this is where it's come. We should encourage, we should be going to schools and to colleges and encouraging people to get into law enforcement, but sell it as the type of law enforcement where you too are going to be policed. We're going to be watching you too. If you think that you can come and join a police department so you can beat the crap out of fill in the blank racist word for a human being, you're wrong. This is not the place for that. And if we catch you doing it, all that work, and maybe even that guaranteed bonus or whatever, you're going to lose because we don't want people like you here. And they need to start leading with that. And maybe they're not. And
I don't know how you attract people to be police officers into that profession, given what a lot of people think about officers right now. You saw the lady Beatrice, who, you know, has a negative perception of some officers. And then if you go trying to recruit people by saying, oh, and by the way, we'll be watching you.
Yes, but why not?
It's good, but I don't know if that's how you get people to come. If that's how you say.
So what is the opposite? Hey, you can come here and you can beat the crap out of people if you feel like you're having a bad day. Of course not.
No.
But we should not be, like Lady Beatrice said, we should not go into it with this idea of every single person that signs up for a cop is doing it for these altruistic good reasons. I'm sure there are people that want to just go in and bash heads, and they can do it now legally because they carry a gun and a badge.
There's some power and control issues, definitely.
Exactly. And so we need to get those people out. And I don't think by giving people a slap on the wrist when they are found to have done wrong is the way to do it. It sends a terrible message to fellow cops, and it sends a terrible message to people that are thinking of getting into law enforcement.
I think if Ladoris Cordell she's not only been a judge, you saw her in the video, but has also done police oversight work in the South Bay for many years. If she's saying this is not the way to go, then I have to trust what she's saying. Because I feel like she really knows what she's talking about.
I don't know anybody that honestly can look. You also heard in the news report that they did not respond for comment. Who's going to support this idea? I mean, seriously. Because just like I mentioned, it is a very slippery slope. When one thing just gets you a little bit of a docking of the pay, you're going to see how far you can go. Now, Randy writes, lots of people hate cops until they need one. Yeah. I get what you're saying, right? It's like you're going to bash on cops until something's going wrong. I'm not bashing on cops. I'm bashing on bad cops. Yeah. And similarly to the saying, like, if you're sitting at a table and I'm just going to do the whole Hitler thing. If you're sitting at a table and a Nazi sits down and you don't get up and leave, or you let the person sit there, there's now two Nazis at the table, right? If you're a cop, and you know there's a bad cop doing bad things, and you just let them, there's now two bad cops. I'm sorry. There's just, if you're allowing crimes to happen against innocent people, misbehavior, misconduct, knowing the power that law enforcement has, and you turn a blind eye to it because of that thin blue line, then yes, you can just join that crew right over there of the people I'm talking about. There needs to be more good cops. Yeah, and that's why Randy, I started. He says, yeah, Nikki, but a lot of people bash on all cops. And that's why every time I talk about law enforcement, I'm calling on my good cop friends and family and saying, speak out. You know, if there's a march against bad policing, be in that march. Because if you're not a bad cop, you're getting lumped in with them anyway. So show your true colors. That's just how I feel. You know, I mean, consequences have actions have consequences. Although I do want to throw this in before we go to Kim's news, because we weren't really able to delve into it yesterday. Lack of consequences for good old Elizabeth Holmes. I love the fact that she is objecting to being forced to pay $250 a month to the victims of her crimes after she is released from prison. Now, I know that she owes like a butt ton of money, apparently. So let's see. Holmes and Balwani, her former COO, were ordered to pay $452 million in restitution to the victims of their crimes. She's ordered to serve 11 years. She's not going to serve 11 years. She was once a billionaire. So, I mean, I don't know if she's lost every single dime that she has, but it's a bit rich for Elizabeth freaking Holmes to say, sorry, I don't have enough money to pay $250 a month to my victims. So I say federal prosecutors ask that once she's released on supervised release, a monetary penalty should be paid monthly, $250 or at least 10% of her wages, whichever is greater. So
for how long? For like a year, 10 years, life?
I wish it was life. I would assume for as long as she's on supervised release, at the very least. It doesn't say in the article that I'm reading. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Chris. She had her money. She's hiding her money somewhere. I'm sorry. She's not stupid. She's just a liar who costs a lot of people a lot of money. Yeah, I know that she's married. I didn't know that her husband is a millionaire. I don't know much about him. I do know that she's royally messed up and she's missing a lot of her children's early years because of this nonsense, but she deserves it. Actions have consequences, people. It shouldn't matter who the hell you are. All right. We're going to take a quick break for news. Coming up, another person I cannot stand, Margorie Taylor Greene. This video was making the rounds. Apparently, she was, there was a hearing regarding vaccines. You know, the VARS website where you have an adverse effect from a vaccine. And so tons of people during COVID especially would go on there and just report all sorts of stuff. So there was a hearing and Robin Walensky with the CDC was being questioned by Margorie Taylor Greene.
Walensky, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Walensky. Is it
Rochelle?
Rochelle. I don't want to say Robin. Yeah. Rochelle Walensky. Thank you, Kim. Was being questioned by Margorie Taylor Greene. And this exchange is just the epitome of how idiotic Margorie Taylor Greene is. So we'll play you that. We'll also touch a little bit more on the fallout from yesterday's arraignment of former President Trump on criminal federal charges for hiding all of those documents and how many people are moving away, including former Vice President Mike Pence, which is about time. And my question as we go into that is going to be, does the timing matter for you? And I know I have some conservatives that watch this show. Is the first person to really call out Trump and say, I mean, and besides Chris Christie, who's been doing it this whole time, but I'm talking about Pence, let's say Haley, Tim Scott, even Asa Hutchinson. Should they move quickly to kind of say, no, what he did is wrong, he should not be the nominee? Or should they just be quiet and just promote themselves? What do you think would work for a candidate to kind of not talk about, you know, the elephant in the room or to take it head on? So we'll talk about all of that. Please, you guys, click the thumbs up button. It shows the support of the show. We absolutely love it. And here's Kim with some news.
Now, from around the world to up your street, the Nikki Medoro Show presents News Czar Kim McAllister.
Guess what? I'm not going to lead with Trump this time. He's coming, but let's talk about interest rates right now. A streak of 10 consecutive interest rate increases has come to an end. For the first time in more than a year, the Federal Reserve is not raising interest rates. Inflation has fallen dramatically since it peaked last summer, though it's still above the Fed's 2% target line, but no interest rate rise today, I should say. And now to Trump. Attorney General Merrick Garland is not commenting directly on former President Trump's federal indictment, but he is commenting about the special counsel. Yeah. Garland called Jack Smith a veteran career prosecutor who is committed to integrity and the rule of law. Smith was in the Miami courtroom yesterday when Trump pled not guilty to 37 counts related to classified documents found by the FBI at his Mar-a-Lago resort. And if you haven't seen the pictures of where they were found, yeah, you should probably go check it out. I don't know if you saw the pictures yesterday of the Trump supporters. I think this is just a general picture. Like yesterday, there were, I would say, maybe 150-ish people that were there supporting Trump, and also many that were saying lock him up. But despite the federal indictment, former President Trump is still Republican voters' top pick in a new survey. Yes, that doesn't matter what he said, right? I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they'd still love me. Well, a Quinnipiac University poll says Trump leads Florida Governor Ron DeSantis by 30%, with 53% of respondents saying they'd vote for the former president. President Biden holds a slight lead over Trump with 48% support over Trump's 44%. Economy, voters' top concern, and preserving democracy, a close second, which is a first for Quinnipiac pollsters. So there you have it. The CEO of the NAACP says the debt ceiling agreement will erode economic progress for Black Americans. A picture of him. His name is Derek Johnson. In an open letter to Joe Biden, Johnson criticized the president for agreeing to restart sudden student loan payments in the fall as part of negotiations with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Johnson said he's disappointed that the needs of Black communities have suffered from that deal. Remember this Virginia teacher who was shot by a 6-year-old student in first grade? Yeah, she's still recovering from the gunshot wounds and now is claiming the school district is literally adding insult to injury. An attorney for Abigail Zwerner claims she was fired, while a Newport News school district official says her contract expired Monday after she had previously informed the district that she wanted to resign. Zwerner has filed a $40 million lawsuit that accuses the school administrators of ignoring warnings that her 6-year-old student was armed hours before he shot her. The New Orleans mayor, LaToya Cantrell, is defending her decision. I don't know. You guys tell me. Think it's defensible? Defending her decision to spend taxpayer dollars on upgraded airfare to go to a climate change summit in South Korea. Cantrell claims she is more protected mentally and physically while she's flying first class. Yes, I too feel protected mentally and physically when I have the finer things in life.
Wait, okay, so that was her real reason? That was the only thing? Is that her mental health does well in first class?
She claims she is more protected mentally and physically while she's flying in first class. Doesn't want to be back there with the riffraff. No. The trip was
that
not
is
cheap.
quite rich. I'm going to totally use a pun right there.
The mayor's fancy seats, combined with seats for her communications director and head of security, cost taxpayers more than $34,000.
Wow.
It's not the first time that her travel plans have made headlines. She has flown first class several times to sign sister city agreements in other countries around the world. Yeah.
Wow.
34 grand for her communications people, her security guard, just so she's protected mentally and physically.
Right. Yeah. We need to protect her mental health. Why, God forbid she should be amongst the people. Jesus.
How about you protect the taxpayers which you represent and serve? How about you protect the public money? How about you don't waste it frivolously on first class tickets?
Yeah. How about that? Huh?
So while Mayor Cantrell is comfortable, my friends over at UPS, maybe not so much. But there's some good news coming out for UPS drivers. The company has agreed to address heat safety measures by having all of its newly purchased vehicles equipped with air conditioning. So if you're stuck driving an old truck, no AC. But if you get one of the new trucks, yes.
Well, I know that's true. My husband used to drive a truck. He drives his van, but it's air conditioned. He used to drive a truck for a laundry delivery service years ago when we lived in Sacramento, and they would just have to keep the doors open. And this is Sacramento. Yeah, it's not common necessarily to have AC, even though you think it'd be something nice to have for a guy that's sitting in the truck all day.
Yeah, one would think that you could at least make them comfortable. It's a physical job. They're running back and forth. They're lifting boxes all
Mm.
day long, and running up to your porch, running upstairs, running downstairs, what have you. And you at least should have a little bit of comfort driving from place to place. But
You'd think.
these air-conditioned vehicles won't be available until January 1st, which means it's another hot summer for UPS drivers.
Ooh.
UPS saying in a release, the air-conditioned vehicles will be provided in the hottest regions of the country where it's possible.
Mm.
So
Good
that's
for them,
something.
I guess. There you go.
Yeah. Let's talk about this new bill making its way through the California State Senate. It would include a child's gender identity in custody cases. So the bill states that the parent could potentially lose custody for not affirming a child's preferred gender. So
Okay.
say your child lives with you and they were born female but they identify as male.
Okay.
Well, if one of the parents that has custody keeps calling the child the daughter and refuses to accept it, that could affect the custody. Hundreds of parents protesting this bill that ultimately passed the Democratic-controlled Senate Judiciary Committee on an 8-1 vote. Opponents say it's obviously a case of gender-affirming care being weaponized. Backers of the measure say it's really only meant to protect children.
I'll say this. I mean, okay, and I've obviously knock on wood, I've never been divorced, never want to get divorced. I would say that this kind of falls in line in divorce proceedings, right? That's what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
As in, which household would be better for the child. Now, I'm assuming we're also talking about children that are of a certain age, because if we're talking about babies, they're not really discussing that, right? They're not
Well,
talking about that.
I mean, I don't know how young a child decides where they'd rather be a boy than a girl, but I've seen it. I've seen stories where some kids in kindergarten or first grade might think that they prefer to be, the other gender, and so
Right.
and
But is
it's
the
not
judge
just
going to interview the child and say, because I've heard like sometimes, and I don't know what age it starts out, judges will bring a child into not in the
sure.
courtroom, but in a room and talk to them. And so if it's kind of like, well, who do you want to be with? I want to be with the parent that is going to acknowledge the gender identity that I want. Is that wrong?
I think what can happen here is after the divorce proceeding, say you get 50-50 custody,
Okay.
and say one parent is refusing to accept a gender transition or identity, and the other
Right.
parent is, then the other parent can go back to court and say, and reopen custody questions and say, this is bad for my child. Their father, mother, what have you, is not respecting their decision to be whatever gender they want to be. And that then could affect the ruling of the judge and, whether 50-50 custody remains or whether one parent gets preferred custody.
Yeah, and I guess I keep focusing on the age of the kid simply because I feel like the kid should have a say. I would be concerned if the kid is not interviewed by the judge and just one angry parent is making this a claim against another one, like, well, I'm recognizing my child's gender and he or she is not. I should get full custody of the kid. Well, wait a minute, is the kid even saying those things? Does the kid have a preference of what parent they live in? So I just want the kid to have more of a say in kind of the home they choose to live in.
Right.
But if it's just being if the gender identity of a child is being weaponized and it's not even an issue in the household, the parent is just using it as an excuse to kind of want 100% full custody, I don't support that. I also don't think that it's 100% of the time the judge is going to side with the parent that is or is not acknowledging a child's gender identity, right? I would assume it would just play a role in said decision.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, again, I think it would be at the discretion of the custody judge,
Yep.
but it's so difficult. I think many things can be playing a role in a decision of what home a judge chooses to allow a child to stay in. Not just gender identity, but maybe lifestyle choices, maybe religion, right? What if
Yeah.
a kid doesn't want to be part of your religion and this other parent wants to make me part of that religion? Should that be taken into account? So all of these issues really have to do, in my opinion, with
Mhm.
the choice of a child on how they want to live and who they want to live with. I would say that a certain age would be required to have that conversation with a child. I don't think, and Randy's asking about 5-year-olds. I don't think a 5-year-old necessarily, maybe not all the time, is necessarily old enough just to even have a conversation with of whose home you want to be in. I don't think that's a fair
No.
question to lay on a 5-year-old. So I don't think
Mm-mm.
that with the gender question is even going to be an issue.
No, but we do know, especially with kids that are teen aged, that not being accepted or having their gender denied can
Mhm.
lead to serious mental health issues. And
Of
so
course.
maybe it is better for them to be in a home and in a place where they are respected and loved and welcomed and, accepted basically, so that they're at less risk of suicide and other mental health
True.
issues.
That is true.
I don't know. We'll see what they vote on it. I did this
Exactly.
story earlier, but I'm doing it again just for you. All right?
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh
Uh-huh.
God.
Taco Bell and Crocs are collaborating to bring customers these fancy slide sandals you see pictured here.
Uh,
The $60 black and
what?
purple
No.
slides are being released nationwide on the Crocs website June 28th. Taco Bell customers who reach the Fire tier status on their app will be able to buy the shoes a week early. It's one of
Oh,
those collector's item things. I could see you wearing these Taco Bell slides.
Hold on. Let me check my app.
I think I can see that happening.
Let me.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. How do I? Like, okay, let's see. Taco Bell. I gotta log in. They gotta look at my face. Okay, log in. Let me see where I am. I don't want to
Are
update
you a
my app.
Fire tier? No, I don't know.
I don't know. Let me see. I have to log in with something or other. So I have to be a Fire. How do you get? You have to use your app. I don't use the app all the time.
Oh, well, you're probably not at the Fire tier,
I
and
probably
therefore
not.
you likely don't qualify for the Crocs. They'll
Well,
probably
that's
sell out a week
annoying.
early. Yeah,
And then they're gonna go on eBay for like $1 million or
right.
something.
You got to get your $60 Crocs, which is, by the way, how much of Crocs normally cost.
$60?
Yeah, because the tween teen group wears them again.
Oh, that is so funny that you mentioned
Yeah.
that. So I took my daughter yesterday. She's graduating 8th grade tomorrow. And so I had to take her. She wanted low, not high tops, but not low. She wanted the mid tops. I don't know the hell you call them. Anyways, I couldn't find them anywhere, the ones that she wanted. So we actually went to the Converse store. And as we're walking there, she goes, "You think we could stop at the Crocs store?" And I looked at her, I'm like, "I'm not buying you freaking Crocs."
That's
was
what I
like, "That's-"
said, but you wouldn't believe how everyone has them now again.
Yeah, I've never heard those
Yeah.
words ever come out of my daughter's mouth. So that explains it. Okay,
Ev-
now I know why.
Even more, they want ugly Crocs. They want white Crocs. It's like
Are
nurses'
there
shoes.
cute ones? Because they all look like
No,
weird
they're
shoes
not.
to me.
There's no cute ones. They all look ugly. And yet, this is what they want. And so who am I to say? And they're
Idiocracy.
expensive.
$60 is a bit. I do hear, okay, I will give Crocs this. I do hear they're comfortable. I hear they're extremely comfortable, but they're uglier than sin. There's a lot of things that are comfortable, right? I'd love to wear a muumuu outside my house every freaking day, but you know what? Sometimes I got to dress up a little bit more. No, I'm not buying Crocs. Not for $60.
Well,
Either.
here's something I might be able to talk you into.
Okay.
Lastly, today is National Bourbon Day.
Honey,
Yep.
it's Bourbon Day. Oh, he's not home yet, but I'm sure he hears me screaming.
A very popular drink in the 20s, now making a comeback today, National Bourbon Day. So there you have it.
Right. Well, now I know I might have to give up my during the week drinking then just to have a bourbon cocktail. We'll see.
We're
We'll
okay with
see.
the bourbon. We're not so okay with the Crocs.
No,
This
there we go.
report is crowd funded, and that means we rely on you for support. You can find us at the NikkiMedoroShow.com, the NikkiMedoroShow.com. You got the Patreon link and the PayPal link up and running, and of course the super chat, super stickers live here on YouTube, and we're very grateful. Thank you very much. I'm Kim McAllister on the Nikki Medoro Show.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it. Okay, so Margorie Taylor Greene. She always says the quiet part out loud. You know what I mean? Like, she's just one of those people where she's like, shut up. You're just a moron. She is. She's a freaking moron. And I really have no comprehension on how she got reelected. So she's on part of the House Oversight Committee because she did something to McCarthy in order to get on the freaking committee. And she's having this hearing. And Rochelle Walensky with the CDC is there. They're talking about the COVID pandemic. Now they're talking about something called VAERS. And basically it's the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. And there's something you need to know about VAERS that Walensky was trying her hardest to explain to idiot Margorie Taylor Greene. So I'll tell you a little bit of this exchange. And again, people, why the hell is she in Congress? Here we go.
vaccine. Any adverse event, if you got hit by a truck after you got your vaccine, that was reported to the vaccine adverse event reporting system. We at CDC have a responsibility to comb through every single one of them, to review the medical charts and to see if they are related. It is the case that the vaccine doesn't prevent being
Ms.
hit.
Walensky, I'll reclaim my time. You did nothing about that and continue to push vaccines. That's what the American people care about.
We review all of the things that come into the vaccine
I love her
adverse
face.
event reporting system. I'd be happy to have our staff
Listen.
educate your staff on the work.
I don't want my staff educated. You should educate the American people about what you've done of 1.5 million reports, because they feel like you've done nothing and continue to say safe and effective.
So you obviously, she didn't hear a freaking word Rochelle Walensky had just said. She didn't. And so I'm reading these tweets, responses to this video today, right?
Do you think she's the dumbest person in America?
Yes. One
Yeah.
of.
Agreed.
One of. I think I don't mean to make light of it, because it's really serious that she's a member of Congress. Not only that, a member of the House Oversight Committee. But so this video is making the rounds, right? Because this happened on Tuesday. This one guy writes in, he's like, my friend, as a joke, reported to the VAERS, the vaccine adverse effects thing, that his penis fell off when he got vaccinated. Anybody could put anything on that website. And that's what Rochelle Walensky was trying to say. She's like, look, we at the CDC have to then comb through all this nonsense to find out what's really true. And Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't hearing a freaking no. The 1.5, she literally just answered your freaking question, woman, and you're not listening to it because you're a moron. She's just an idiot. I just don't understand why she keeps getting
And Rochelle Walensky is sitting there going, I can't believe I have to talk to her.
Did you see Walensky's face? She's like, listen to me.
I can't believe that I have to take questions from this person.
Yes.
And that she's allowed to speak to me. I can't.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the fact is that reclaiming my time, and then she again spews ignorance. And I don't want to brush over people's concerns about vaccines. You are entitled to have concerns about vaccines. You are entitled to go on that website.
Yeah.
And if you have an adverse effect to a vaccine, to report it. But one person, and you tell me if this would be a hindrance or would help. One person was offering up the suggestion, look, if you want to put something on this website, given the fact that so many people use it, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and other anti-vaxxers, as evidence, and I'm putting that in quotes, that vaccines harm people, that it should go through your doctor first. So there has to be some sort of like initial, well, that didn't really happen. If you're going to report that your penis fell off and your penis is still attached to your body, that maybe perhaps you should not be able to put that on this website as something that happened. On the other hand, as we saw during COVID, there's a lot of people that call themselves doctors nowadays and claim to know all sorts of things about infectious diseases and epidemiology that have no background in it at all.
I think that you have a pandemic like COVID with a disease that is new that we don't know anything about. You have a vaccine that, I mean, maybe what Marjorie Taylor Greene wants the pandemic to still be going on and still have us locked up in our houses.
And it still is happening, by the way.
It's still happening, but it's the vaccine preventing people from death.
Yes.
And so if she's wanting people to die, I don't get that. But we saw this vaccine come out really quickly based on good science. But I think in this case, with an emergency declaration made that this vaccine is going to be put out to the public, that knowing right away in real time what people are experiencing is really important. So that they have to sift through erroneous claims is fine. What we did see with VAERS is some people using it to kind of further lies. Like, do you remember when the vaccine, maybe we were a couple months into it and there was people saying, oh, it affects fertility.
Oh yeah.
If you're a young woman and of a childbearing age and you take this vaccine, you won't be able to have kids. When I think we interviewed Dr. Peter Chin Hong and he explained how one thing has nothing to do with the other.
Right.
What cells the vaccine is affecting and how your reproductive system is completely different. So when you take the time to educate yourself on some of the reports that are coming out of VARs or what people are saying, and you look at the science, then you have a much better feeling about it. But people like Margorie Taylor Greene don't take that time. She's listening to the penis fall off people because she's not the best and brightest bulb on the Christmas tree.
It's funny. I mean, I do think that people were really confused. It was our first pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that a lot of information, a lot of unknowns were thrown at us. There was a lot of changing guidance, especially at the beginning, because we were learning more things about it, right? Which is important. I remember, specifically, Kim, because you brought it up with the whole fertility thing. I had a friend who really looked at me. She's like, I don't know if I want my kid to get it. I mean, I want her to have babies. And she wasn't speaking like conspiracy. She was speaking of, I'm worried that we don't know what we don't know. Right. And I said, look, I understand that. I would talk to your doctor about what's going to happen. But you know what else prevents pregnancy? Death. And I was literally that blood. I was like, look, death does, because there was tons of people dying at the time. And I'm like, we don't want people to die. Do we want any consequences from the unknown? I mean, we can't avoid that. I remember, TMI, but I remember when I got my vaccine, my cycle was off a little bit for a couple of months. And that's fine. You want to know why? There's a lot of things that throw my cycle off. If I get really, really sick, it throws it off. If I'm on vacation, apparently it throws it off. There's any woman out there, you feel me? Things happen, right? Yeah. There's women that don't perfectly healthy, childbearing, have kids. They never get a period because of their birth control. So people were taking any sort of change in menstruation as a sign that the vaccine was messing with your fertility, when that's not true, right? It's just not true. And then you leave it up to men who don't even understand the menstrual cycle. Not all men, not going to insult everybody, but as that bros what was it? Remember that one chick that was doing the questionnaires of people asking people, Roe versus bros, asking people about periods and women's reproductive. They don't have a clue.
They have no idea.
But yes, they're going to legislate something like that. So anyways, I just feel like these are the people that the GOP do invite into their party. And somebody else was mentioning it. It sucks that, Mindy was saying it. Republicans don't listen. They just spew junk. Not all of them. I don't like to speak in absolutes. But to kind of transition to the next topic regarding former President Donald Trump and all the conspiracies and lies that he continues to spew and isn't challenged on by many members of his own political party, I really want to see what happens following this arraignment. So let's see. Some Republicans are privately acknowledging that this might actually be a serious one for good old Trump. An operative, as this person's being called, in Governor Ron DeSantis' orbit, who requested anonymity by NBC, said that from an objective standpoint, the federal charges Trump faces for his post-presidency handling of classified documents are far more serious than the earlier ones around hush money payments before the 2016 election.
Right.
This person said, I don't know what's going to happen in Georgia, but the man is going to prison. It's happening. So at this point, where we are is, quote, who's going to be the nominee? Donald Trump broke the law, and frankly, I'm not a never Trumper. I'm really not. But this is just too much. Do you think that's going to catch on, that way of thinking? That we should kind of maybe switch gears a little bit.
I think it already is.
You think so?
Yeah.
Because I don't hear Haley. Pence came out and said that he can't defend the quote unquote very serious allegations made against Trump. But is that a full-throated, that guy broke the law and we shouldn't even be talking about him in the same sentence as the presidency?
No. But you saw today a couple of the candidates kind of backing away just a little bit, just enough to make it noticeable.
Right.
However, I was just reading this story about Newt Gingrich. What a total idiot. He appeared on a podcast today and he was doubling down and basically saying it's the corruption in the Biden administration that's going to put Trump back in the White House. So while some people are still Trumpity Trump, there are some people that are seeing the writing on the wall and maybe going, I had a chance to read that 37 count indictment,
which they should be doing.
And maybe I shouldn't be so on the Trump bandwagon right now. Right.
I would just, I would literally say, and there is a way, I mean, come on, they have PR people. There is a way to say it without pissing off the base. Just be like, look, while I support former President Donald Trump's policies, and I think that he really did try to make America great again. We can't use this distraction as we go up against the liberal left. I mean, come on, you can use all the woke, you can use all the token words and still not support former President Donald Trump, who in all likelihood is going to face serious repercussions for taking and keeping those documents. So I just don't know why these people won't do it. And I will say this, the Republican candidate for president that's going for the nominee, I feel like the one that sticks his or her neck out first will be able to entice more independents and people that don't like Biden over. I do. So who's going to be the first one? Who's going to be the first one?
Here's what Gingrich is saying.
Okay.
He predicts President Biden's alleged corruption will put Donald Trump back in the White House. He spoke on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show. The former Republican, whoever those yahoos are. The former Republican Speaker of the House claimed he's never seen such a corruption in the Oval Office before. Never seen anything like this. Really? Because I have. The Republicans have been looking into whether the Biden family profited off their influence with foreign governments, but so far they have not presented any hard evidence.
Shocking! That's their MO. They don't. They make claims with no evidence.
No, you've seen over and over again. Tomorrow we'll have a bombshell, and we'll
just
tell
wait.
you.
Just wait.
Here's it's coming. Where is it? Where is it? Because with all the investigations and all the time you've had, then show me the proof. Guess what?
There isn't any.
Guess what's happening? The money where the mouth is, where there's actual charges being filed, it's against former President Trump because there's evidence. You don't file charges against a former president of the United States unless you have all your ducks in a row and you are very, very sure. And so these charges that are being filed, it's not willy-nilly political. You can't just do that. This is some serious stuff going on, as you mentioned.
Absolutely. And the thing is, they live on this just wait narrative, right? They did it during, January 6th. Remember, that's what got everybody all in a tizzy about it. Just wait. Trump's going to release he's going to prove that he's actually still president right now. Actually, Trump is leading this country. I mean, the conspiracy theory on literally the phrase, just wait, we have the documents. Just wait, it's coming out tomorrow. Rudy Giuliani, okay, but you've lost court case after court case after court case in instances in which you had to show the stuff that we were supposed to be waiting for, and then lost attorneys. Why? Because they're like, well, I'm not going before a judge with this freaking nonsense. Like, I don't want to be disbarred, which is what happens when you do crap like that. So yeah, you're being fed a line of bull crap. Stop eating it. Be full already, Trumpers. Jesus, Lord Almighty.
Stop eating it.
I mean, they have to be full at one point. Now, Randy brings up a good point. Where do you fit Chris Christie in this? Because yes, Chris Christie has thrown his hat in the ring, but he's also said he wants to be kind of that spoiler for Trump because he's a total never Trumper. And so I think that Chris Christie also knows that he's not getting the nomination. Yeah. He also comes with his own freaking baggage, of course, but I think gonna have fun. A spoiler. Yeah, he's gonna have fun doing it.
He's gonna have a great time. Yeah.
So yeah, when I say sticking your neck out first, I mean someone like Pence, Haley, Tim Scott, those people that really, even though they're really low, I don't think DeSantis is going to, but maybe. I mean, the operative that I was quoting was in DeSantis's orbit, they said. So maybe he will, but I mean, it needs to be full throated for DeSantis or any of these other lower tier people to actually get those that are like, well, is this person really different? Are they going to speak truth to power and still carry on Republican, policies, which again, you're allowed to have. I just fully disagree with them. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. It really, really is. Okay. We are going to switch gears in the second part of the show. Coming up, oh, I do want to let you guys know that tomorrow, earlier today, right before the show, I did an interview with our friend Emily Hovind at the San Francisco Chronicle.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so that's going to actually air tomorrow because I'm going to be at my daughter's graduation. She graduates 8th grade. She's like home early. They're doing nothing. I don't know if this happened in your daughter's school, Kim. Yes. They're like watching movies and crap, right? Signing yearbooks. Yeah. I don't even know why they're in school. It's like I could have slept in and not had to wake up kids this morning. but whatever. So anyways, tomorrow is her graduation. So I wanted to get, and it's a great conversation that we had. And what it was about was, here's a quiz question. What is the number one thing that people love to say on why we are seeing the drugs and the homelessness and all the problems on the streets of San Francisco, or the gun violence or whatever? What is the number one reason that people give? Anyone? Anybody? It's mental illness. We have a mental health crisis in this country, right? So the San Francisco Chronicle editorial board, which Emily Hoven is a part of, did this excellent article. And they talked to policy wonks. They talked to people on the front lines about what is going on, how we got to this situation regarding mental health, and literally kind of the doom loop cycle that has stemmed from something that happened decades ago. And then we try to look into our crystal ball and see, where do we go from here? And it was interesting because I also asked her about the Oakland A's reverse boycott, and that too tied in to everything that we were talking about. So that is coming up tomorrow. But coming up in the second part of the show today, San Francisco is on this list of downtown recovery, and they did not rank well. But when I looked at the data, what was interesting is where other California downtowns ranked. And is there something kind of different there? We'll also talk about fare evaders, criminals in our midst. Is this a crime that is just, there's no real harm done, just get on Muni and evade the fare and not pay it? Well, that could soon be changing. And I want to know, how many of you still have a checkbook? How many of you write checks? And if you do, what do you write them? Why do you write them? Who are you sending them to? Are you teaching your kids how to fill out a check or even an envelope? Are there any skills that are just kind of going away, where if you put it and flop it down in front of, I don't know, a 12-year-old, they would know what the hell that was and what to do with it? Let me know in the comments. And again, please click the thumbs up button to show your support for the show. That's all coming up after Kim's news.
Now, from around the world to up your street, the Nikki Medoro Show presents News Czar Kim McAllister.
Oh, there he is, hugging the flag like he loves America. Mike Pence isn't sure now whether he would pardon former President Trump if he was convicted on federal charges. Speaking on, again, the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show Wednesday, the former vice president said it's really too early to tell what exactly he would do if he was president.
These are serious charges. And as I said, I can't defend what's been alleged, but the president does deserve to make his defense.
Pence argued no one knows what Trump's defense is yet, although we kind of heard a bit of it last night. It's not my fault. I'm being persecuted. It's election fraud, blah, blah, blah. He went on to say, Pence, that he would never diminish the importance of defending the nation's secrets, and he takes the pardon power very seriously. President Biden, meanwhile, is kind of shooting down some criticism over environmental regulations. He's shooting down a congressional effort to overturn a rule limiting pollution from heavy-duty vehicles like trucks and buses. President Biden vetoed the measure today, arguing his administration's rule cuts pollution, boosts public health, and advances environmental justice across the country. The rule in question seeks to limit emissions from a group of pollutants known as nitrogen oxides. Opponents of the rule argue it's too costly for the industry to comply with it. About 6 in 10 Americans, 6 in 10, say prejudice against LGBTQ people is a very serious problem today. That is the news from the Quinnipiac University survey. They found 1 in 3 American adults say prejudice against the groups are a very serious problem. A quarter say it's somewhat serious. Meanwhile, just under 40% said it's either a not at all kind of problem or a not so serious issue. These poll results come in a year that nearly 500 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced in various states across the nation. That, according to the ACLU. Is that somebody topless in the background? Oh, look at that picture. Woohoo! Recovery pretty slow for Santa Cruz County. We saw what happened. The winter storms packed a punch. This is in Pajaro. kind of near the Watsonville area. The recovery has been super slow, and it is expected to take a few years to fix all the storm damage after this year's first atmospheric river hit the area. Work is largely focused on roads like Highway 9. Crews just closed it Monday at Jay's Slide to complete a construction project that includes adding a retaining wall now. They finished repairs at the Holiday Slide, but there's more to be done as the total damage adds up to $75 million in Santa Cruz County. Now, a little bit of political star power coming to California. It is the First Lady who will be in Los Angeles today, fundraising for her husband's re-election campaign. And then it's coming to San Francisco for Jill Biden, where she held 2 political events yesterday afternoon. Dr. Jill Biden also spoke in support of Gabby Giffords last night, celebrating 30 years of the former Arizona Congresswoman's Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. They remembered a local 1993 law firm shooting where a disgruntled client killed 8 people, injured 6. That happened in the years before Giffords was shot in the head while meeting with voters. So Jill Biden taking a swing through California. I don't know if you remember the case of this doctor who drove his Prius off a cliff. I think Devil's Slide is where it happened on the peninsula. The Southern California doctor accused of driving his family over a cliff is now being banned from practicing medicine. A judge issuing the ruling this week as the high-profile case plays out in court. Prosecutors claim he tried to kill his wife and their 2 children, 4 and 7 years old, the day after New Year's. They were all rescued when their car plunged almost 300 feet off the highway near San Francisco. Court records show state medical board officials stepped in, calling the father a danger to the public. Here's a story for you. I have no idea why someone would allegedly do this, but the manager of the morgue at Harvard Medical School is under federal indictment for allegedly selling stolen body parts. Who buys that? According to the indictment, Cedric Lodge stole parts of dissected cadavers and took them to his house in Goffstown, New Hampshire. He then sold the parts online. Lodge's wife and 2 alleged buyers are also charged in the indictment released today. This show is crowdfunded. That means we rely on you. So thank you very much. You can find us at thenikkimedoroshow.com. Got the Patreon, got the PayPal, got other stuff too. The merchandise website is there, and you'll find podcasts and how to click on those if you just want to carry us along for the ride without the video. Let's get the Medoro Show.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you to those that donated to our super chat. Kung Fu Femmes with a $10 super sticker. Thank you, Stan, with a $10 donation as well. Joe Fong and Wes both started us off with $10 each at the beginning of the show. Just look for the $sign under the live chat, and that's the way you can donate during the show or during the replay. And like Kim mentioned, 100% crowdfunded. So thenikkimedoroshow.com is the way you can support the show in any way you can afford. All right. So is San Francisco in this kind of doom loop? We were talking yesterday about, revitalizing certain areas. So what? So Westfield's leaving today. Cinemark announced it was leaving Westfield Mall, which makes sense, right? I mean, if people aren't going to the mall, they're not going to go to the movies. Right. Look, that spot is just leaving.
Yeah.
Well, ABC7, they analyzed 63 cities' downtown recoveries, and they found that San Francisco ranked dead last. Okay. So I want to go over some of the numbers. So San Jose, and this is accurate as of April 10th of this year. Okay. So the same time period in 2019. So they were comparing 2019 to April of this year. San Francisco's downtown was at 29% of its activity compared to the same period in 2019. 29%. Oakland was at 48%. And downtown San Jose, which actually surprised me, was at 75% compared to 2019. So obviously still lower, but definitely much higher than San Francisco. The reason why it surprised me for San Jose and kind of why I wanted to talk about this, is your downtown in whatever city you live in the most vibrant part of your city? So for me, I always compare downtown San Jose to something like Santana Row and Valley Fair, even though they kind of split it. Valley Fair is split right there. But I would be interested to see, like in Petaluma, is downtown where everything happens, or is there another offshoot? I know Petaluma is much smaller than San Jose.
It depends. You have the downtown, like the old town,
Right.
where there's a lot of restaurants and a lot of people walking around. But the I would say a lot of business happens on the east side of town, where all the kind of big box stores are. There's
Okay.
Target, and then there's Kohl's, and there's Rayleigh's, and there's Ross's. Like that's where all those kind of stores are.
Okay.
So I don't really see necessarily what's happening on the east side too much. It seems like stores are full. It seems like the Target parking lot's always full.
Yeah.
But I think that I've seen a lot of businesses that couldn't survive the pandemic. We had one that was an Irish pub, and I remember the owner used to listen to KGO all the time, and he'd call us and he'd say, during the pandemic, I'm really in trouble. The money's
no.
not coming to help me
Yeah.
fast enough. And it was heartbreaking. So I think there are a lot of businesses that closed down, and that type of things, those businesses that attracted people that aren't there anymore, people are having to find a different place to go. So, but
Right.
I feel like things have bounced back. Yeah.
Yeah. Kim says downtown and North Petaluma are where all the breweries are
Yeah.
busy too. Wes makes a good point. I bet it's proportional to the cost of rent for commercial space in any given city. And I like that comment, because when I look at the list of the downtowns that had the best recovery at the top of the list, number 1, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Then second is Bakersfield. So for all the crap that I talk about McCarthy, his downtown apparently has had a great recovery.
Yeah.
Next is Fresno. So in the top 3
Yeah.
are 2 California cities, Fresno. Then we go to El Paso, Texas, Columbus, Ohio, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then the third California city in the top 10, San Diego, which a lot of people had been mentioning. It's clean, it's safe. When I ride my bike down in San Diego, I don't feel like I'm going to be the victim of a crime. It does beg the question of, do bad headlines give people the perception that they are unsafe before they even go someplace, right? Like I've gone to San Francisco, I've walked down, had coffee, gone to a restaurant, gone to my car that wasn't broken into, went home and had a fabulous time, right? Does that story resonate with anybody? No. It's the person whose car got broken into or was robbed or stepped over needles. That story resonates. And honestly, if it keeps happening, then it's going to continue to make the headlines.
I would look at those cities, Bakersfield, and what was the other one, Fresno?
It was, Fresno.
And think, okay, well, what's the difference between those cities and a city like San Francisco? Why would it be that they would bounce back more quickly than San Francisco? And the only thing I'm rolling around in my brain is the type of work people do in those places. So in San Francisco, maybe it is that most of your jobs are tech workers or people that work remotely and or retail, who the retail is not going to succeed if you don't have the workers that were remote coming back in to make the purchases. So that kind of whole cycle is what created our doom loop, where all these offices are now sitting empty and businesses are now shuttering offices and saying, okay, work remotely or only come in 2 days a week or what have you. Whereas in Bakersfield and Fresno, and this is an assumption on my part and could be completely incorrect, but perhaps the jobs in those areas are more agricultural in nature, where you physically have to be there to do the work. And people also live in those areas because it's cheaper. So perhaps that's the reason why the bounce back happened faster there, because you already have people living in those areas and you have people that physically have to be there to do those jobs. I mean, that's just a guess.
Well, and Wes was asking, it's you, Wes. Yeah. Wes was asking, are the bottom of the list cities expensive cities? Well, let me list them for you. So let's see. I'm just looking at the map. Cleveland, Ohio. It's at 32% of its activity during this time, which is pretty low. St. Louis, Missouri, 36. Minneapolis, 38.
Yeah.
New Orleans is at 44. Austin, Texas is at 49. These are just the darker ones. Philadelphia is 45. Let's see. Another one. Portland, Oregon is at 39. That's an expensive city. Seattle, expensive city, 46. So yeah, I mean, LA is at 60. which is not as bad. But yeah, I mean, I would say it's a mix. I don't know the cost of living in all of those cities, but it runs the gamut across the country, not necessarily blue state or red state. The Lady Beatrice says the pandemic caused more trouble than what was worth. There wasn't anything that didn't seem affected by it, including the buy it all up, dog eat dog mentality. True. Natalie says, I worked in downtown San Jose from 1998 to 2020. The first part of that was all businesses. Then they built lots of downtown housing. The downtown residents are what's keeping downtown San Jose alive. Exactly. I was mentioning this yesterday. You have to be strategic with your planning. Now, I was specifically talking about Valley Fair Mall and Santana Row and giving people something other than just anchor stores, right? You got to give people something else. What if I don't want to shop at Nordstrom, right? What if I don't want to shop at Macy's? What if I want to go to those, higher end stores or more obscure stores, more of those boutiques? Yeah, it's bringing it back. And I'm speaking specifically about San Francisco. It's going to take real planning and really digging deep on what people actually want and whether they can afford to stay. Because otherwise, they're going to be like me and like Kim. You go into San Francisco, you work, you leave. You're not spending that much time there unless there's something really that you want to do. And so that brings in another criminal aspect, which is a different type of crime that seems to be very popular. And that, of course, is on public transportation. Muni fare evaders are obviously affecting revenue. Data team analysis found that Muni budgeted for far fewer inspectors than it did before the pandemic in 2019. I'm going to play a little bit of what they found and what's actually happening at some of these stations. Here we go.
We showed you how not paying to ride on Muni has become somewhat of a common theme for some regular passengers. What we also discovered was that Muni has budgeted for fewer fare inspectors than it did in 2019 before the pandemic, 45 instead of 50. Budgeted doesn't mean that there are actually 45 inspectors. In fact, as of May 2023, the transit agency had only 36 of those employees on the payroll, and only 23 were active, meaning a few were on some kind of leave. By the way, we went to the Chinatown Rosepac Muni station to see if any inspectors were asking to see verification of payment and did not find a single one.
Nope.
But the head of the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, which oversees Muni, says that is about to change.
The good news from the state means that we can continue to hire in critical categories, including positions like fare inspectors, parking control officers, as well as safety ambassadors.
The California legislature is expected to vote on Thursday to close the operating deficit gap of several transit systems, including Muni and BART, because ridership has yet to come back to pre-pandemic levels. Here's what Muni has experienced since 2019, a sharp decline in ridership, which is now just seeing some recovery. The state is expected to provide half of what Muni needs to stabilize its finances.
So I will say this. I think that if you have a revenue problem, then you need to get the fares that you are owed. On the other hand, are people just not going to ride on Muni then? Is this the time? I guess the better question is this the time and the place to use that money? Because it's only like half the money that they've been requesting to kind of fill the hole in the state budget to support public transportation. So is now the time to do it? I mean, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Obviously, you're hoping that those that are evading the fare need to ride public transit so much that they'll just start paying it. On the other hand, are they going to go away? If we don't have public transportation, if BART went away, I mean, talk about a doom loop. It would be an explosion of doom. You need public transportation, even if it is, there's late trains and what have you. You need it. You absolutely need it. And so I don't know why. I am not one that has ever evaded a fare, but again, I'm not one to ride that much public transportation.
Right.
Caltrain is what I would ride. And I would say it's expensive for me because I pretty much go end of the line to end of the line. So if I had to do it every day, it'd kind of be expensive.
Would you evade the fare if you knew no one was checking?
Exactly. That's what I was just going to ask. So light rail here in San Jose in the South Bay. I don't remember the last time I've been on the train. And I'm obviously not on it all the time, but I'm thinking the last time I went to Levi Stadium, I don't think anybody checked that I had a ticket.
Mm.
I mean, they check it on the actual train. So they might have, but I don't remember the person doing it. And then if you have a crowded ass train, like leaving a football game, they're not going on there checking everybody having a ticket. So you need something that lets, even though it's very slow, that's why they have them when you enter the actual station, to do it that way, because it's not feasible to check everybody on the train all of the time. So if you jump over the turnstiles and you're most likely in. So I think it's human nature to want to get away with something. I think it's human nature to be like, well, I don't have money right now. They're not checking it anyway. Why did I buy this ticket? They didn't even check it. That's how it starts, right? You buy a ticket, they don't check it, and you're like, well, do I need to buy this?
What's the point?
What's the point of buying? And the point is because you're using the service and you should pay for it, obviously.
Yeah.
Kim says there's no fare evading on the ferry, and it's $10 per direction. A tad more expensive than the Munibus. Eric said, I pay the fare because I'm honest like that. Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always paid. I would feel, you know what I would tell myself? It would figure that the one time I don't pay it, they're going to go look around for the tickets. Right.
Of course they would.
I'm not going to.
And I would be mortified. Mortified. I'm sorry, ma'am. Can we see your ticket? Yeah. I would never want to put myself in that position. No.
And Calvin raises an interesting point. They already want fare increases because of fare evaders. They're trying to make up the money. So they need to find a way to get people to pay. And I would say that has to be at the turnstiles, more, people checking those tickets, because otherwise, human nature, man, they're just going to want to try to get away with whatever they can get away with, Another, just to kind of wrap up this kind of criminal fraud, ticket evasion, and now there's check fraud. It's on the rise. Kim, when is the last time you actually wrote a check?
So I think I wrote a check to the school's PTA for some reason.
Okay.
And I might have written a check for a field trip.
So school stuff.
So it's more school stuff where they maybe don't take electronic, but in other than that, when I'm out in the world paying for things, no. I don't. I mean, no checks.
I mean, I don't remember the last time I've stood in a grocery line and somebody whipped out their checkbook and everyone was like, oh my God, right? It just doesn't happen anymore. Super Mike says, I pay rent with a check. That's it. So I go online and pay my landlord online. So I have the address, I put them in my bill pay, and that's how I do it. Somebody else had a good one. Oh, Beth, I pay all my bills with checks, no online banking. After cleaning up end-of-life situations for several people, having my kids try and crack online banking wouldn't be fair to them. I mean, and I'm not knocking it, but isn't it as simple as putting in your will the information to get into your bank account? Like your passwords? Like you should have a password manager or something to get into the... I mean, that's just my knee-jerk reaction to, Beth, what you're saying. Heather can't remember the last time I used a check. I just wrote a check. And what was funny is it cleared. And I'm always online checking my online banking because I have like a million different bank accounts. And I was like, what is this charge? And I was like, oh, it's a check. And it was because I had to fix the fence. I had to send a check. Let's see. Jim says, yes, still have a checkbook, landlord and IRS only. I'll definitely die before I go through the current amount of checks I have. Checks are expensive. The last time I actually bought a book of checks, I remember it being very expensive. So what I do is I go and buy counter checks. You know what those are? You just go to the counter at the bank and you just, can I get something? And you just get a sheet. And it's not expensive. And that usually lasts me if I ever am caught in a situation where they need it.
There's an industry I haven't really thought about. I wonder what happened to all those companies that sold checks. Like, I wonder if their business plummeted.
Bank?
No, those businesses where you could buy specialty checks. I have a friend who had, I had tropical ones, and I have a friend who had little martini glasses all over her checks.
I thought that was just through your bank, though. I didn't know that there was actual check company that did that. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Natalie wrote a check for her son's passport a couple of months ago.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by how many people saying I wrote a check. How old are your checks? I mean, that like you mentioned, he's like, I'm going to die before I go through all these checks. That's why I didn't buy a box of them. I'm like, I don't need all of these checks. Wes says, I don't write checks, but when I have to send one, I send a check using my online bank. Yeah, that's what I do. That's basically like bill pay is I put in the address and my account and everything you would write on a check.
Yeah.
And then the bank sends it for me. My landlord at this house accepts it through Zelle or something like that, but it's through my bank.
Right.
James says, I just realized I only accept checks from my clients. Maybe it's time to modernize. Well, there's some fraud you guys need to watch out for. Here's a little bit of a news report that check fraud is actually pretty much on the rise.
Uh-oh.
Oh, let's turn on the volume.
Years. That's long ago.
I don't write checks.
So you might be surprised to learn check fraud is way up. According to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, banks filed more than 680,000 reports of check fraud last year. That's nearly double the 350,000 reports filed in 2021.
I've been talking about it all over.
Dr. David Maimone is the director of the Evidence-Based Cybersecurity Research Group at Georgia State University. He wrote this article back in January of 2022 and says he got pushback at the time.
I mean, who writes a check anymore?
Apparently, it happens enough.
I still occasionally write checks for my business expenses.
Maimone says despite a drop in check usage that goes back decades, the check fraud problem exploded during the pandemic, with organized groups of criminals targeting U.S. mail, searching for checks, sometimes washing them, which involves changing the payee's name and dollar amount, or, among other things, Maimone told us criminals will just sell the stolen check online.
My recommendation to folks will be to simply limit their check usage to as low as possible. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Things will get worse till they get better, unfortunately.
Yeah. So basically, don't write checks anymore. I mean, these fraudsters are out there. It's an antiquated system. It really is. I mean, you don't need to, you can balance your bank accounts, right? And make sure and do your budget and everything like that. But balancing a checkbook, something like that isn't needed anymore. If you put a check in front of Julia, would she know how to fill it out?
I don't think so. Not yet.
I mean, I feel like it seems very self-explanatory, right? Name. I feel like they might get caught up on the whole payee, right? Like, well, who is it? I'm paying you, that sort of thing. Somebody was also mentioning that the signature has to be in cursive. I don't think that that's actually true.
I don't think so.
And
what about Marley? Would she know?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe. I feel like she's seen me fill out checks, and I think that's how people really learn.
Right.
Does your daughter know how to like fill out an envelope?
Yes.
That's another one that's always like thrown out there. These kids don't even know how to fill it because they were emailing all the time. And where does the stamp go? And where does the return address go? And the to and all that. But I feel like because we've Christmas cards, birthday cards, things like that. My kids are a little hipper to that sort of thing.
You're talking about checks. The one thing that the one check incident that I've had recently, and it happens every year, is grandparents always send checks in the mail for birthdays. That's the one time I find myself with a check and I'm like, now I got to go to the bank.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can, the other thing that's technology, do you ever do take a picture of your check and it's deposited into, I just do that. I don't need it. And the funny thing is they write a check to my kid who doesn't have a checking account. And so I'm like, sign the back of it and I just deposit it into my bank account. I don't know if that's actually legal, but I've never been hemmed up for it. So but the reason I'm talking about this is all those buttload of checks that are just gathering dust.
Mm-hmm.
Probably if you're not going to use them, you should get rid of them in case there's a risk of you losing them. And then these fraudsters are out, they'll sell them. I mean, it has all the information you need on there. You can just write them and how much are they checking them. And even if they do check it and you dispute it, there's always that gap where they could screw you, right? Your bills could start bouncing and all those sorts of things. So the bank could send it. That's how I do it. I pay my bills online. I know that there's obviously risks to everything, but that's the way that I do it. How do you feel about driverless cars, Kim McAllister? Have you hopped in one? Have you used one?
I have not. I think I'm going to wait until the technology is a little bit more stable. I'm kind of excited for this as, what we all thought of as the future.
Right.
I think that's kind of cool. Our friend from KGO, John Daly, decided to do a test and he hopped into a taxi. You had to make an appointment as kind of their test run program. He
Okay.
got into, I think it was a Waymo vehicle at night. He decided not to do it on a night it was raining.
That's
He
good.
did it on another night. And he said it was a really interesting experience, that there were a couple glitches with it still, but overall it was okay. But I see sometimes they have accidents here and there. And so I don't know how much
But
I
so do
trust yet.
people.
Yes, but they're supposed to be perfect. People are not. We expect human error.
Perfection.
We
All
don't
right.
expect this from AI. We expect the cameras all over the car, like the software running
How many
the
cameras do you
program
need not
be.
to hit something? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to do a couple headlines. When we come back, I'm going to play you this piece by the BBC. And it's not looking at how people feel driving in driverless cars, but how do people feel when they encounter one and they're like a pedestrian? And it's really interesting, the human nature that happens, even though there's technically nobody supposed to be in the car. So it's really, really interesting because they're already out there on our streets. I mean, you have likely interacted, driven behind, driven or walked across a driverless car. And so these are coming, they're here. And we need to learn how to interact with them in a safe way. So we'll talk about that. And before we end the show, I'll get to this TikToker who faked his own death. And you tell me if his reason was good enough. That's coming up on the Nikki Medoro Show.
Now, from around the world to up your street, the Nikki Medoro Show presents News Czar Kim McAllister.
Let's go to school. How about that? California schools spending billions in record pandemic aid before their 2024 deadline. A study from Future Ed examines how school districts have been spending the school emergency relief funds. Study shows many districts appear to have spent the money where it was most needed, on distance learning, tutors, and mental health needs. Others appear to have spent the money on existing day-to-day needs and hiring thousands of new employees, even though the funds are a one-time grant. Independent auditors have raised questions over millions of dollars of possible fraud in officials' use of pandemic funds. School district officials say they are denying wrongdoing, and because of vague, complicated reporting requirements, it's difficult to assess if that money was spent properly or not. An active duty Marine and a second suspect under arrest for allegedly firebombing a Southern California Planned Parenthood. The two Orange County men, you could see here, dressed up in dark clothing as they allegedly threw Molotov cocktails at the Costa Mesa clinic of Planned Parenthood in March of 2022. Facing federal charges now, 21-year-old Tiber Ergel and 23-year-old Chance Brannon. They were arrested Wednesday morning when the FBI raided their apartment in Irvine. Brannon is a Marine currently stationed at Camp Pendleton. The firebombing did not injure anyone. It's created a bunch of fear. Here in Petaluma, some interesting things going on. The library in Petaluma is preparing for possible protests again over its Drag Story Hour event this weekend. More than 100 protesters gathered outside the library last Saturday to speak out against the event. Library officials tell the Press Democrat they're taking measures to ensure everyone is safe. The all-ages Drag Story Hour is scheduled for 11 a.m. till noon on Saturday. There are other Drag Story Hour events also planned for Rincon in Santa Rosa area later the same day, as well as Windsor and the Central Santa Rosa Regional Libraries on Sunday as well. It seemed to me last weekend there were more people in support of Drag Story Hour outside the library than protesters. So hopefully that will be the way it is this weekend as well. The European Union is charging Google with anti-competitive practices in advertising their technology. EU regulators may seek to break up the search giant's business to address concerns about its ad tech dominance. Alphabet, Google's parent company, is in the process of reviewing the claims and might request a hearing to present its comments. Meanwhile, over at Apple, they're having some... Nope, that's Elizabeth. This is Apple. Apple is announcing its Racial Equity and Justice Initiative has raised more than $200 million since it was launched in 2020. That's a lot of money to raise in 3 years. The long-term global effort set up by the company to advance equity and expand opportunities for people of color and indigenous communities. Apple's investment in the initiative has more than doubled its initial financial commitment. And now, let's talk about Elizabeth. As Nikki mentioned earlier, Elizabeth Holmes' lawyers argue the former Theranos CEO should not be forced to pay restitution because she has limited financial means. What? Okay. The prosecutors proposed that she pay $250 a month to her victims. Holmes reported to prison last month to serve her 11-year plus sentence. And again, now she's arguing against having to pay that $250.
Pay it up, woman.
Oh, Elizabeth, what are you doing? This is a Republican congressman who removed his glass eye during a soccer match to jokingly make a point. Dan Crenshaw of Texas was a former Navy SEAL, lost his right eye fighting in the war in Afghanistan. During the congressional soccer match this week, the Republican team believed the referees were making some bad calls. So Crenshaw, to make a point, pops out his glass eye and says, apparently they don't have very good eyesight. Maybe I'll pass my eye over to them. They can use
that's hilarious. I'll give him the gold star for that one. That's awesome. I don't agree with your politics, Crenshaw, but I like the joke. That's funny.
I mean, you don't pop out your glass eye at a soccer match.
Oh, hell yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do. Dirty on the field. What if it's rolling around? I don't know.
Oh, you need another eye, ref? I could totally see that happening. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, so I don't have visuals for this story, and you can thank me. Oh, there I am, frozen again in time. But here's the story.
Okay.
It is a man running for town council on Long Island is losing support after photos show him standing naked nudie at the front door of his home. Babylon's Republican committee told Eyewitness News on Tuesday they are not going to support the run for Kevin Sabella Sr. They say he has been standing nude behind the screen of his front door for the past 2 months. What are you doing?
He doesn't want. So is he doing it in protest, or is he just like, I'm in my house, I could be naked if I want to?
Just feet from his campaign sign, right behind the front door screen, naked. Yeah.
Wow.
Sabella apparently did not return calls to the media outlet asking if he would withdraw from the race. Police are investigating the claims because maybe even if you're in your own house, if people can see you, then that
what
might
about
not
the
be legal.
children?
Public nudity? I don't know.
Exactly. I don't know. Maybe it's his best asset. Maybe he's like, I'm just going with what I think.
I just want to show the people who I really am.
Exactly.
All my glory.
Nothing to hide here. I know I'm wearing no clothes. There you go.
Talk about transparency.
That's funny.
This show is crowdfunded. We rely on you to help us out, contribute to this crowdfunded show, the NikkiMedoroShow.com. That's where the Patreon and the PayPal links are, which really gives us an ample idea of what we have to work with every month. So we thank you for that. Yep. And the super sticker is open here on YouTube as well. And thank you for all the ways that you participate in the show. I'm Kim McAllister on the Nikki Medoro Show.
Thank you, Kim. All right, so driverless cars. Somebody in the comments had said, I'm going to find it because it's a little far back. I know. Well, I loved Wes's driverless cars like Christine. No. I would not do that at all. But yeah. Oh, here it is. Liz said it. My daughter rode in one. She said it was fine. I was speechless. Now, if my kid wanted to get into a driverless car, I don't think I'd feel comfortable. I mean, I wouldn't let my kid ride by themselves in like an Uber or anything anyway. But if they were of age and they could ride by themselves, I don't know how I would feel about it. But it's not just how people in the car feel. It's also how people feel interacting with them on the street. So the BBC did this really great kind of research. And it's so funny what they did to try to gauge people's reaction to, and I'm putting this in quotes, a driverless car. So here's their report.
This driver is disguising himself as a car seat as part of a study to learn how pedestrians react to driverless cars.
The study worked by considering the driver in the vehicle, so it appeared as an autonomous car that was driving itself, We had an interface, an external HMI attached to the front of the vehicle and to the top of the windscreen. These were controlled by a researcher who was also sitting in the vehicle. And we drove the vehicle around the University of Nottingham campus over several days. And really, it was a question of finding how people naturally responded to the technology. The challenges associated with the project were how to create a driverless vehicle. And one way to do that is by using what we refer to as the ghost driver methodology, where a driver is hidden in the seat. You can't see them if you were to glance into the vehicle, but then you can drive around effectively as normal, and it gives the impression of a driverless vehicle.
I'm going to just stop it right here. That doesn't look safe to be driving anyway. I don't know about your peripheral vision. It's a guy right there, but I thought it was kind of funny. So let's finish the report.
With manually driven cars, you often find that pedestrians will wave and gesture to the driver. What was really interesting with the study, and particularly with me as hidden driver, was that people still continue to do so. So they would wave and thank the car, even though there was no driver present.
The study will now look at how vulnerable road users, such as cyclists and e-scooter riders, interact with self-driving cars.
I'm assuming they'll still flip them off if they feel like they've been, cut off or something like that. But I feel like some people do things out of habit. So if I saw a car coming and that stopped, I'd wave, even if I'm not looking through the windshield to notice whether or not it's a driverless car or not. My whole thing is, it's the danger aspect of it. If it starts moving towards me, right? If I'm going to cuss out my fellow driver, in quotes, and there's nobody in the car, I don't know. It's not as satisfying, Kim. I don't trust it. Like, what if it's freaking out? What if it starts moving forward? What if it doesn't see me? Accidents can happen. Chris said, which is so sad, Treat Williams, the actor who just passed away because he was in a motorcycle accident, would probably be alive with driverless cars. That's not necessarily true. I mean, we've obviously seen cars in possible driverless mode smash into things because they don't see it. We've seen driverless cars stop for no reason and not go again. Jim, good point. Road rage shootings will go down if nobody's actually driving the vehicle. Although, counter argument, Jim, it leaves more time for the people riding in the car to shoot people. I'm not saying that should happen, but I'm just saying if they're not busy driving the car, then they could be aiming.
A story that came out in February says Waymo's driverless cars were involved in 2 crashes and 18 minor contact events over 1 million miles. So after driving 1 million miles, the driverless vehicle, pilot program,
okay,
2 accidents, 18 minor contact events.
Is that good in comparison to humans? I would assume.
I would imagine it's excellent.
I would imagine that's excellent, right?
1 million miles, only 2 crashes? I don't know.
Well, I mean, how many miles do you think you've driven in the last time you've had an accident?
Well, I mean, look at the mileage on
you
my
bumping
car.
in everything?
That's if there's like 100,000 miles on my car, then I've probably had it for, I don't know.
Well, in your
8 years
lifetime
or
is what I
so.
kind of mean. I mean, in your lifetime. Yeah, I guess. 1 million miles is a lot. That is true. Lori says, I think a passenger should need to know how to drive to be in a driverless car. Might have to take over. So no kids under 16. That's an excellent point, Lori. Yeah. It's like Kim mentioned, Waymo, all these companies, they're here. Remember we were talking about the automatic braking. Have you ever driven a car with automatic braking where if it gets too close to the car, it brakes for you?
Mm-mm.
So the last time I had, when I was getting my car fixed, I had a rental that had it. It's weird. So you're just driving and then all of a sudden someone gets in front of you and your car just slows down on its own. And then at one time I was on the freeway. So I'm going, 65, 70 miles per hour. And a guy cut me off. And it's almost as if I slammed on the brakes. Like I went forward. I was like, oh my God. But the car was doing it. So it was a little disconcerting, but it reacted very, very quickly.
I don't like not having control.
Right. I mean, you do still have control in the fact that you can override it. And I mean, you can press the brake on your own. You can press the gas on your own. But I wonder how many accidents it does avoid when you're looking in the backseat to grab something, right? If I was drifting into the lane, it would try to push me back, or my steering wheel would kind of vibrate like you're too far over. If you don't signal, if I didn't signal before changing lanes, I got a notification on my car that I wasn't doing it right.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's making you have better behavior.
I wonder if you have a car like that, if the information can get shipped back to your insurance company. Like
Ooh,
Nikki
good point.
Medoro does not use her blinker, her turn blinker. She is not a safe driver.
She's
And
not,
then all of a
don't
sudden your
insure
rates
her
go
ass.
up. Right.
Well, what if I share my car though? What if I'm an excellent driver, but my kid sucks?
Well, is your kid on the insurance?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Then it's
That's
your
a very, very
household that
good
needs their
point.
insurance rates raised.
Yeah. Brian says, here's what I've heard. The driverless car can run into situations where they stop and can't move for 3 hours while they try to reach AI, like opposite a semi truck that needed more room to make a turn. Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with a computer that is still new.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I think in normal driving conditions with no curveballs, it probably does pretty good. But driving is full of curveballs, you know? And all it's going to take is for a driverless car to cause a horrific accident.
Yeah.
And then where are we going to be? Because humans do it all the time. And it's not like we take away driver's licenses from everyone else. But if there is no driver in the driverless car and something tragic happens, I think we're going to have a real big discussion on how much the technology is going to be incorporated.
So the Waymo story, where they put out their statistics of what happened over 1 million miles, they say the minor contact events where like someone backed up and hit a Waymo car that was parked.
Oh, it was a
or
human error?
Wind blew a grocery cart into a Waymo car. That's those kind of things that weren't even supposed to be reported, but they were incidents. So they did list them on the thing. But what they said was every vehicle to vehicle event, so there were 2, involved 1 or more road rule violation and or dangerous behaviors on the part of the human drivers in the other vehicle. So they say they want to be really transparent and what have you, but they're saying it's never the Waymo software, that it's, they're on the road with human drivers. So you're going to have someone change lanes, bam, smack into a Waymo vehicle. So even if what you say is true or what you say happens, where, eventually there's a driverless car and there's a horrible accident, I would think that the company would say, not our software, it's the other guy who was driving.
You're proving our point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like Eric's comment. He says, my only experience with auto driving is automatic parallel parking, which I completely get behind. I've never experienced a car parallel parking for me. I'm just going to go on record and say I'm an excellent parallel parker.
City living, city working. Absolutely.
I don't need it. Like the other day, I was pulling up for lunch with some of my friends and there was a spot and it was right side. I had to go in on the right side. I nailed it in 2 moves. And I'm telling you, people were impressed that were watching. I was like, yes, parallel parking can be a pain in the ass. I'm not going to say, but when you nail it, it feels so good.
What's a game changer is the backup camera.
Oh God, yes.
I mean,
I love that thing.
I probably used to leave a lot more space when I was trying to parallel park before I had that backup camera. Now I'm like, I was still shocked about how much space is actually behind my car. But I remember my dad in the SoCal high school parking lot putting up pylons. And every time I knocked one over, he'd say, you just hit that car.
Yep.
You just hit that car. And over again, we did it until I could just slide right in.
Well, as long as I was a pretty good parallel driver. The Prius that I drive is the first car I've ever had with a backup camera. But yeah, I think if you're taught how far to go back before you start turning the wheel, it's a lesson. You have to practice it. Some people I just don't think are taught properly.
Right.
And so it's like they're guessing every time. It's like, what are you doing? Like you have to get next to the spot to even know if you can fit, people. But I digress. It's a skill that we shouldn't learn or shouldn't unlearn. But I will say, if the car did it for me and did it smoothly, I guess I'd let it do it for me. That's fine. Okay, one more story because I can't believe. Okay, so the guy is Belgium. I would play you like a news report on it, but everything's in Belgium. What language? Dutch? What do they speak in Belgium? I don't know the language. Whatever they speak there. That's the language.
I think they speak French and German and I don't know.
I'm going to sound like an idiot. I don't know what they speak, but it's not in English. So I didn't want to play the whole entire thing. But there is this guy. He's a TikToker. I guess he has a huge following. He decided he wanted to teach his family a lesson about the importance in staying in touch. It's German and Flemish. Thank you.
Yeah, they have 3 official languages: Dutch, French, and German.
I thought it was Dutch. Okay, I got one right. There we go. Okay, so he apparently was kind of pissed off. Now, what parent hasn't felt this way, right? No one's calling me. I call people, they don't call me back. And so he decides to fake his own death. He reportedly roped his wife and kids into the ruse. So it wasn't everybody. His daughter posted online about the heartbreak at her father's passing. And so the extended family shows up for this funeral. Okay. And again, he's not dead. He's just, and I'm going to show you hold on. I want to pause it right here. This is him. He gets in a helicopter as they're all gathered for this funeral. He is in a helicopter and he's coming down. So here's a little bit of the video. Oh, darn it. Am I going to, no, not that one. Not that one. This one. Here we go. So there he is. You guys can see it. Oh, here we go. Well, anyways, the computer's not working for me. There we go.
Are all these people at his funeral?
Yeah. All these people. So you see the little helicopter up there. Sorry, I can't expand it. So now they're running and they're hugging him. I have a better video. So this is him hugging one of his extended relatives.
I would be mad.
Look at this, though. I mean, he seems really happy that the guy is alive. But I kind of feel like I'd be pissed off at the same time.
How do you do that to people you love?
Yeah, Kim's like, how to lose all your friends in one idiotic act. Look how sad. That was my best friend. She's like, you never call me anymore. Look, I feel like it's a bit of an ego trip.
Yeah.
He's like laughing.
Let me see who shows up to my funeral.
Right. That's exactly what it seems like. I don't know. I thought it was so funny. I will admit, my daughter is graduating 8th grade tomorrow. She's going to go to high school. I know these aren't the easiest years, although I'm really excited for her and all the milestones and everything.
Yeah.
But there is this emotion of like, nobody calls me anymore. I've lost track with my extended family. Fill in the blank doesn't reach out. And I reach out. I'm always reaching out. That person's not reaching out. Here's a tip, though. Don't fake your own death. I think that's a bit much. It's a little extra. If I have to say, it's a little extra.
I would be really upset, I have to say. By
Yeah.
the way, here's a map
here we
of
go.
Belgium. There they speak Dutch at the top, French in the middle, and a little chunk of German. There you
Okay,
have
I
it.
thought Dutch. I didn't know if it was French or not.
I didn't know either. I feel like we're all learning together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, bromance with the guy that was hugging him. Yeah, the cost of the funeral. I don't know if he actually did the whole casket, but it kind of looks like he did. Oh, I will tell you guys on Friday. Calvin's asking about the 8th grade gift. I'm not quite sure if she's going to be happy about it. We'll see. We'll see. But I'm very proud of her. And thank you to Lori. The new meds went fabulously.
Oh,
so we're
great.
keeping our fingers crossed. My daughter is ending the year on a high note. Next week, it's all about Washington, D.C. Have you heard from your daughter? Speaking of people calling and reaching out, Kim, your daughter's in Washington, D.C. Has she reached out?
High drama in Washington, D.C. over the hotel rooms and which people are in the rooms. It's supposed to be assigned, but there were only 2 girls in one room, and one girl wanted to go to the other room, and so Julia felt alone. And then they said she snored when she finally did go to the other room.
Julia does?
She doesn't, though, normally, but they were so exhausted by having to get up at 3 a.m. and then run around. So it could be that she was just so tired that she did.
Right.
But now they want her to leave their room and go to her own room. So
how sad is
it's
that?
really sad, and it's kind of marring this whole trip for her. But I did get some pictures she sent today of Gettysburg, so she's learning about things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you see, like my daughter, the rooms are assigned and they already know who's in the room, and it's 4 people. There's no extra beds.
Yeah.
So, but they do say the room assignments with the girls is always the biggest drama on trips like this. Well,
Yeah.
I hope it goes better. I can't wait to hear about it. She comes back Saturday, I'm assuming.
When does she come back? Yeah, I believe she comes back
Comes out here
Saturday.
Okay,
Mhm.
great. All right, tomorrow Emily Hovind will be on the show. We're going to be talking about, this whole narrative surrounding the mental health crisis. How did we get here? Not just in the Bay Area, but the state as a whole, and the doom loop that's involved in all of it. That's all coming up. Have a great day. Bye.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You're sprout like a beautiful blossom. You're all so the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow. Okay.